There's 2 rules you need to know. They might just save your life. Rule 1. When a human being is driven into a corner, you should never underestimate the levels of stupid and dangerous they will resort to in order to escape. Rule 2. If a deal seems too good to be true, it definitely is. Normally, you should never take advice from me, but just in case you may experience what I just dealt with, you're going to need all the advice from me that you could get. About a decade back, gambling had put me on the streets as soon as I was out of college. At the time, it seemed like a better idea to just throw away what money I had at a local bar rather than carrying on my sad little addiction and futility. So that's exactly what I did. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in a puddle behind the bar as if I was thrown out. It was right then, in my lowest possible moment, that I met him. "Hey there, buddy," he said, his voice pleasantly cheerful and melodic. "You look like you need a helping hand." Thankfully, I've got 2. There was a gentle tug on both of my shoulders, pulling me upright. He leaned me against a wall. I could finally take a better look at him. To begin with, I wondered if I was hallucinating. He seemed so strange, so out of place. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out. The kind stranger smiled and turned his yellow eyes towards me. "You're asking the wrong person there, amigo. I'd tell you if I knew. Honest," he replied with a laugh. "What's your name, though?" "Nate," I said, wondering if I was about to vomit or not. "Nate Wilson." There was a long, awkward silence after that. "The bar," he finally said. "How much of that whole fiasco in there do you remember?" I'd almost forgotten about them myself, but the second he said it, all the memories came back. I'd ranted and raved, screamed at the top of my lungs in there. "Debt, debt, debt." "Oh, don't worry about those," I said, my cheeks reddening with shame. "That's not your problem. I'll deal with it." The stranger didn't respond. He began reaching into his jacket. "You're my best friend, Nate," he said. "And friends are meant to help each other out of sticky situations, aren't they? Since when did I become his best friend?" But before I could respond, he produced a stack of bills from a pocket inside his suit and passed it over to me. "Will this be enough?" he asked. It was at this point that I was most open to the idea of this all being some crazy dream. It was $20,000. I can't possibly accept this." "Please do," he said with another ear-to-ear grin. "You needed an awful lot more than I do." Rule 1. When a human being is driven into a corner, you should never underestimate the levels of stupid and dangerous they will resort to in order to escape. "But why?" was the only question I could summon. He smiled and shrugged. "Just promise me you'll stop gambling." Without another word, I lunged forward and hugged him. A long, warm, tight embrace. "Thank you so much," I whispered, my tears dripping onto the shoulder of his suit. "Oh, one more thing," he said, reaching into his jacket again. "A little something I wrote up in the bar just to help you out." He passed me a folded-up piece of paper. I didn't even think to check it at the time. I just shoved it into the pocket of my filthy coat and carried on thanking him. "There must be something you want," I pleaded, palms open in deference to his generosity. "Anything. I owe you my life." The stranger grinned and stroked his narrow chin in contemplation. "Now that's an irresistible offer," he said almost jokingly. "You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Wilson. Leave it with me, okay? I'm sure I'll think of something." He began walking away after that, whistling sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows as if he was some little kid. And just like that, the stranger was gone. Almost funny, isn't it? How someone like that can have such a profound impact on your life, then just up and disappear just as quickly. Using the stranger's money, I paid off my gambling debts in full and still had a little left over. I swore to stick to my promise, for my own sake and his. Once I was all square with the house, I finally took a moment to check the piece of paper that he'd left me with. This is when I realized something was horribly wrong. It was a list of instructions, specific down to the days, minutes, hours, and seconds, where to be and what to do in order to maximize success at that moment. He'd left stock tips for companies that didn't exist, on which house to buy, and how to get it at the best price. 5th of October 2009, go to Starbucks in town, meet Jesse O'Brien, 3 hours 51 minutes and 17 seconds p.m. 2 years later, Jesse O'Brien became Jesse Wilson. The stranger had engineered me meeting the love of my life, precise to the exact second we'd first make eye contact. I invested in the right stocks and pulled out of the wrong ones. My capital skyrocketed, and my personal wealth just grew greater and greater. 8th of June 2011, buy house 10 Aspen Way, don't rent, 6 hours 14 minutes and 43 seconds p.m. And so I did. Jesse and I moved into that big, gorgeous house once our honeymoon was over. We were wealthy, healthy, and deeply in love. But something was missing. Something the stranger had accounted for too. 17th of August 2012, conceived child with Jesse, 8 hours 31 minutes and 19 seconds p.m. Our little girl is called April. The stranger picked it, not me. She's 4 now, and I love her with all my heart. The stranger, a man who I'd known for less than an hour, had steered the entire course of my life in the best possible direction, out of nothing more than the kindness of his heart. He'd saved me. He'd saved all of us. That's why, as I was walking down the street this morning, my arms full of grocery bags, when I heard someone singing sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows behind me, I recognized the voice instantly. Without a moment's hesitation, I turned to face him. It looked like that strange man hadn't aged a day in an entire decade. "Jesus Christ," I said, my face cracking into a smile impossible to hide. It's actually you. Hi, my friend, he giggled. The reason I'm here is because I finally figured out what I wanted from you. Beg your pardon? 10 years ago you said you owed me something, he replied. I couldn't decide at the time, but I think I know now. Oh, of course, I said, my heart filled with a sudden trepidation. So, what is it you want? The stranger gave that same ear-to-ear grin that he was wearing back behind the dive bar in 2007. I want your name, Nate. I almost laughed to begin with, but I soon realized he wasn't joking. He was deadly serious. My name? Yes, Nate, I've always loved your name. It's so wonderful, he said, wringing his hands with glee. I think it'll fit me just right. This man had given me my entire life and saved me from my debt. If he wanted to go around calling himself Nate Wilson too, what right did I have to stop him? Sure thing, buddy, I said with a smile. The stranger, or rather Nate Wilson, extended another spidery hand towards me. Let's shake on it, he said, his voice elated. And I did, not knowing this would be my biggest mistake. When I arrived home, however, something was off. I saw April playing around with her toy lawnmower in the front yard. I smiled and called to her, but she didn't respond. She was too wrapped up in her little fantasy. I made my way inside with the groceries. Jessie was in the kitchen, cutting up carrots. Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows blasted out of the radio. Today just kept getting weirder and weirder. Hey, babe, I called to her, putting the groceries on the kitchen table. You'll never guess who I ran into this morning. Jessie didn't respond. She just carried on chopping and hummed to the tune. Babe, everything okay? I asked. Still no response. At this point, I was beginning to get a little worried. I walked over to Jessie and placed a tentative hand on her shoulder. It just went straight through her goddamn body like she was a hologram, or I was. Again, no response from Jessie. What the hell had happened? Honey, I'm home. I heard a familiar voice call from the hallway outside. Jessie suddenly perked up, turning her head towards the noise. Hi, sweetie, she said. The stranger walked into the kitchen, a smile stretched across his waxen face. I met an old friend in town. We had a little catch-up. As he said that last part, he threw me a sickening wink with one of his yellow eyes. Huh, Jessie said. Anyone I know? She leaned forward and gave the stranger a kiss, the kind of kiss she always gave me. Nah, the stranger said with a chuckle. I don't think you've ever met him. I felt like my mind was going to implode. Nothing going on was making any kind of goddamn sense. April called from outside, something about the grass. You mind taking over the carrots for a sec, babe? Jessie said to the stranger. I better go check on April. No problem, honey, he said, taking the knife from her hand and giving her another kiss. Jessie left the room, leaving just me and the stranger, all alone. I quietly fumed, and he chopped carrots. What the hell is going on? I finally asked him, when I'd gained the modicum of composure required to do so. What have you done, you crazy weirdo? He carried on chopping the carrots. His eyes never left the chopping board. My name is Nate, stranger, he said. I'd really appreciate it if you called me by it. In my state of fury, I tried to grab him by the shoulder and turn him to face me. I could actually touch him, but he wouldn't budge. It was like trying to move a mountain. That's my name, this is my house, and that's my wife, I said to him, rage and confusion rendering my voice a crackly mess. I want you out of here and out of my life, the stranger chuckled. See, that's where you're wrong, Slick. All that changed hands, he said. This is Nate Wilson's house. Jessie is Nate Wilson's wife, and this is Nate Wilson's life. And by the terms of our recent deal, I'm Nate Wilson. And you, good buddy? You're nobody. I won't accept that, I yelled, slamming my hand down onto the kitchen countertop. Without another word, Nate Wilson rammed the knife through my hand. There was no pain, no blood. It just phased through, as though I no longer even existed. Word to the wise, stranger. Reality marches on regardless of whether you accept it, he said, as I pulled my hand away from the knife. You never owned this life, stranger. You just rented it from me, piece by piece. He stuck the knife into the chopping board and turned around to me. The gravity of it all was finally closing in. I fell onto the ground and began to cry. Don't blame yourself, buddy, he said. I was waiting for centuries before I found someone who I could interact with. But what do I do now? What I did, stranger, Nate Wilson said, eating another piece of carrot with undue relish. Ask around, find someone you can talk to. Might be this afternoon, who knows? Sure, it could be a week, month, year, decade, century, but I'm an eternal optimist. A century? I said, trying to ebb the stream of tears flowing out of me. I can't wait that long. You'd be surprised, pal. Patience is something you'll learn, being nameless. When you finally do manage to wrangle yourself a name, you'll appreciate it a little more this time. You'll make something of yourself. Rule 2. If a deal seems too good to be true, it definitely is. As the man who had just stolen my entire existence carried on hacking up vegetables, I left the room, out of the house entirely. I stole one last look at Jessie and April, playing on the lawn, totally carefree. All smiles. They'd never even know that I was gone. Perhaps it was better that way. No heartache. I whispered a goodbye that they'd never hear, and set off into the city. I was walking alone, in search of something, hell, anything, to call myself. But if you know all this now, that means one good thing. You can read what I'm writing. If you can read my words, perhaps you can hear them. And if you can hear them, perhaps you can reply. If so, I hope to hear from you soon. We have a lot to talk about, you and I, a lot to discuss. I'll help you out of any bind you need, and I'll barely ask for anything in return.